1. And so I call this April 6, 2021 virtual zoning meeting of the Bernalillo County Board of Commissioners to order. We will have a moment of silence followed by the Pledge of Allegiance led by Minos Savoca. And Mino, you're muted.
I wasn't sure when it was time to jump in. Okay. Sorry about that. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And so, PDS Director Lucas Tafoya, are there any changes or additions to the agenda today?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. Yes, if it pleases the Commission, the staff are recommending remand of item 5B back to the CPC. There was an issue with noticing, and this will need to be reheard by the CPC if it pleases the Commission.
Okay, thank you. So I will move to remand 5B to the County Planning Commission to address a notification issue that occurred prior to the CPC hearing. Do I have a second? Commissioner O'Malley, thank you. All in favor? And Madam Clerk, Linda Stouffer, please call the roll.
Mr. Barboa. Commissioner Benson.
Aye.
Commissioner O'Malley.
Aye.
Vice Chair Casada.
Aye.
Madam Chair Piscotti.
Aye.
So called.
Thank you very much. And next, moving on to approval of minutes. I'll move to approve the March 9, 2021 zoning meeting minutes. Do I have a second? Commissioner Benson, thank you for that second. All in favor, say aye. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Barboa. Commissioner Benson.
Aye.
Commissioner O'Malley.
Aye.
Vice Chair Casada.
Aye.
Madam Chair Piscotti.
Aye.
So
thank you very much. So moving right along to appeals. We will now proceed with the appeals and appeals procedure as follows. The next item on the agenda is appeals. The first appeal and only appeal is COA 2021-0007/CSU 2021-0007. Special use permit for a contractor's yard and permissive C2 uses. And so this is an appeal based on the evidence in the record. Ordinarily, no new evidence will be accepted before the county commission. However, in the event that new evidence or testimony is accepted, the clerk will swear any witnesses who may testify concerning it. The order of presentation and time limits as set forth in our rules of procedure are as follows. Staff presentation, 5 minutes. Appellant's presentation, 10 minutes. Opponent's presentation, 15 minutes. Appellant's summation or rebuttal, 5 minutes. Staff closure, 2 minutes. Board discussion and questions and action. Please be aware that the time limits for each side, appellants and opponents, is the total time allowed regardless of the number of persons signed up to speak. So each side will need to decide how to divide the total minutes among the speakers. This is a quasi-judicial proceeding. The commission is to act as judges of the particular facts concerning the parties before it, applying existing law to the facts. The commission is to base its decision only on the facts presented to it, by the parties and not on any facts supposed by it that may exist outside the proceedings. The commission is to act with impartiality toward each party, applying the law to the facts without favoritism or bias, or the mere desirability of a given result. A commissioner with a financial or family interest in the outcome of a quasi-judicial proceeding should disclose any potential conflict in accordance with these rules, and should, if necessary, recuse him or herself from the proceedings. The commission, in rendering its decision, should make a clear statement of what it believes to be the relevant facts and why those facts led to its decision. Each commissioner shall avoid ex parte communications with parties bringing cases before the commission. However, such communications that occur may be cured by the procedures stated in Rule number 4. So now we will begin with staff's presentation. And Mino, I
you.
think you're up again.
Yes.
Madam Chair, real quickly, if we can have all of those providing testimony today to be sworn in by Madam Clerk.
Okay, great. So Julianne, do you want to call those people?
So I have Eric Tidmore, Kim Rodart Wolf, Carl Garcia.
Here.
Okay,
So you have 3, Julie?
Yes, I'm not seeing. Let's see. Okay, I see Eric. I see Carl. I don't see Kim. But those that are providing testimony. Oh, there she is. Okay, go ahead.
there you are.
Yes.
Okay,
Okay.
will you all raise your right hand, please? And when I say I, you state your name. I
Carl Garcia.
Eric Tidmore.
will be testifying on this appeals only and will be telling the truth and only the truth to this appeal.
I do.
I do.
One more.
I do.
There you go. Thank you. Sworn in.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, Madam Clerk. And thank you, Julianne. We want to make sure that we do everything according to procedure. So Mino, please proceed with your presentation.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Chair Piscotti and Commissioners. My name is Mino Savoca. I am a program planner with Bernalillo County Planning and Development Services Department. The item before you now is agenda item number 5A, case number COA 2021-0007, an appeal of the conditions of case number CSU 2021-0007, a request for a special use permit for a contractor's yard and permissive C2 uses. The subject property is located at 9100 2nd Street Northwest, and the underlying zoning is C2. The property has an existing special use permit, CSU 2018-0013. The site includes a large office and warehouse building from multiple tenants with outdoor vehicle, equipment, and material storage. The applicant sought to update the existing special use permit to add and reconfigure parking and storage on the site. After neighbors voiced concerns about rodents, noise, and light pollution and the lack of visual screening, the County Planning Commission voted to approve the request, albeit with modified conditions. The CPC voted to reduce the term of the SUP from 15 years to 5 years, sought to institute a 6-foot landscape buffer on all sides of the property in excess of the landscape buffer requirements of the zoning code and larger than the existing buffer on the site. The applicant is appealing these modified conditions. The commission may choose to approve the appeal, setting a new term of use for the special use permit and establishing different requirements for the landscape buffer. Denying the appeal does not negate the special use permit, it merely maintains the conditions as approved by the CPC. Staff recommends denial of this request. This concludes my presentation, and I'll stand for questions from the commission.
Okay, any questions? Okay, seeing none, we will go ahead with the appellant's presentation, 10 minutes.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, thank you very much for allowing me to present before you today. Are you able to hear me okay? Thank you. My name is Carl Garcia, and I appear before you today as the agent for North 2nd Street LLC, Eric Tidmore, regarding the property located at 9100 2nd Street Northwest, Tract A2, Lands of Beckham, containing approximately 2 acres. And the case number is CSU 2021-0007. At the March 3rd, 2021 public hearing, the County Planning Commission voted to approve with conditions the request for special use permit for a contractor's yard and C2 permissive uses at above listed property. The County Planning Commission found that the applicant provided adequate justification for the request and met the criteria of Resolution 11686. Specifically, the applicant indicated how approval of the new special use permit with proposed changes is more advantageous to the community because it furthers applicable goals and policies of the comprehensive plan and North Valley area plan. Changed conditions have also occurred that include commercial and industrial uses along 2nd Street. The County Planning Commission also found that this request is consistent with the health, safety, and general welfare of Bernalillo County. So the conditions of approval to be appealed, there are 2 conditions. The special use permit for contractor's yard and C2 uses was approved with 9 conditions. The following are the only 2 conditions that are respectfully being appealed. That would be condition number 6. The special use permit shall be issued for a term of 5 years. And condition 7A, a 6-foot landscaping buffer on the north, east, south, and west borders of the property to comply with section 19 of the zoning code. So regarding the appeal, we respectfully maintain that due to time constraints and floor discussion being closed at the Planning County Commission, we were unable to fully describe the conditions of existing landscaping on the property. Also, we were not given an opportunity to give a rebuttal to concerns from residential neighbors to the north. Therefore, a decision was made without the County Planning Commission hearing all the full details of existing conditions on the property. So I will first start with the details of appeal regarding condition number 6. In 2018, case number CSU 2018-0013, a special use for contractor's yard and permissive C2 uses was approved on this property for a special use permit for a period of 15 years. And this was submitted by the current owner, Eric Tidmore. Our request is to remove the 5-year approval for this special use. The fact that the initial approval was for 15 years, and since that approval, Mr. Tidmore has made additional improvements to the property, we respectfully maintain that the stricter 5-year approval should be removed. Mr. Tidmore has also demonstrated his long-term commitment to remain in business at this location for many years to come. There are currently 3 15-year contracts, lease contracts in place from tenants on the property, including Mr. Tidmore occupying one of those spaces. Unfortunately, not all business property needs were met with the first special use permit, which resulted in a violation being issued. The reason for the most recent special use request was to bring the property into full compliance with Bernalillo County while considering surrounding property, surrounding community, and accommodating needs of occupants at the property. So the details of appeal regarding condition 7A are next, and that requirement is the requirement of a 6-foot buffer on all sides of the property. So currently on the north side, abutting residential as a 6-foot landscape buffer does exist. Therefore, there is no change to this request, to this buffer, this portion. Regarding the east side, to the east, immediately abutting Mr. Tidmore's property is a property that contains a cell tower use on the property, and that is currently a commercial service and a commercial use. So our request is to keep the property in its current condition with the existing 6-foot block wall and no landscape buffer, since the rear lot is currently a commercial use, with the condition that if the lot ever becomes a residential use, that a 6-foot landscape buffer will be installed along the eastern property line. Regarding the south side landscaping, our request is to keep the existing 3-foot landscape buffer along majority of the southern property line. This request is necessary to maintain the 20-foot unobstructed access easement to accommodate fire safety with no obstructions. Upon entrance to the property along the southern property line, a 6-foot block wall exists to accommodate the 6-foot metal electronic gate. The wall extends into the easement 3 feet, and this lines up with the current landscape buffer there. If the existing 3-foot landscape buffer is required to be widened to 6 feet, it will protrude into the access easement and could cause confusion for vehicles entering into the property, and would also encroach into that 20-foot easement. So where the 7 parking spaces were approved at the southeast corner of the lot, if any landscape buffer is allowed, this will cut into the required 20-foot access easement to the rear lot containing the commercial cell tower use. And per section 414 of the county code, post-construction phase stormwater quality protection is required. So the current existing 3-foot landscape buffer will contain water runoff on the property and keep the runoff from discharging into the county's storm drainage system. So regarding the west side landscaping, our request is to keep the property in its current condition. There is a current 3-foot landscape buffer that abuts the parking area. If the 3-foot landscape buffer abutting the parking lot is required to be widened to 6 feet, it will protrude into the required 20-foot access for fire safety equipment. Being that a fire hydrant is located at the southwest corner of the property, there is a high likelihood that if fire equipment was ever on the property, they will need to at least a 20-foot of unobstructed access around the entire property. Because the property jogs in along the west property line, a 6-foot landscape buffer along the west property line where it is currently no buffer, that would shrink the access easement to 16 feet and in width, and will be in violation of the required 20-foot access for the safety equipment.
Mr. Garcia, I just want to remind you of your time. You have 2 minutes.
Okay, I will speed it up. The neighbor complaints, there was complaints, they wanted the wall raised to 8 feet. They believe the cameras were invading their privacy. The lights at the rear of the property were disturbing them. They stated, okay, yeah, and there was a complaint of rodents. So just want to let you know what Mr. Tidmore has done. The north block wall is currently in the process of being raised to 8 feet. It's almost completed. There are photos of live camera footage showing that the cameras do not extend beyond the property and do not invade the privacy of the properties to the north, solely maintained on Mr. Tidmore's property. The property was inspected at night. Photos were taken of the lights to the rear. The lights are situated on the buildings, so they are positioned facing downward, do not directly shine on the neighboring properties, and they have always been facing downward. The property owner does have the building sprayed monthly and will maintain that, and all vehicle equipment will be done in accordance with the approval. And the intent of Mr. Tidmore is to be a considerate and good neighbor to all surrounding properties, the community. And Mr. Tidmore has secured 15-year leases at his property, also demonstrating his long-term commitment to stay at this location. Mr. Tidmore plans to build a dental and health clinic at the front portion of his property, contributing to the property tax and gross receipts tax. This business, along with the new businesses, will continue to benefit the surrounding community, Bernalillo County, and contributed to taxes and provide employment. We want to thank the County Planning Commission for all the time they took to review our project and all the work they do. We want to publicly thank all Bernalillo County planning zoning staff for all their assistance. They have all been extremely helpful. And lastly, we want to thank the Bernalillo County Commission for taking the time to review our appeal. Thank you very much, and I will stand for any questions.
Okay, thank you. And so next we move on to opponent's presentation, 15 minutes. Is there anybody here from the opponent side?
Madam Chair, there doesn't appear to be any opponents for this appeal.
Okay, thank you. So then next, appellant summation or rebuttal. So Mr. Garcia, is it back to you? 5 minutes?
Thank you. once again, I just want to reiterate the fact that Mr. Tidmore does want to do his best and be a good neighbor to everybody. And we definitely admit, have mistakes been made? Sure, there's been a couple of mistakes, and Mr. Tidmore has done his best to remedy those in a timely manner. It's just the fact that once he finished his construction on the property and getting those rented, and then trying to get everything in order, it did take some time. But he has submitted this additional special use request to remedy every situation on that property. So the property, it not only does it look good, it's protecting the neighbor, the residences to the south, to the north. We have had many, we have spoken to the neighbors and worked to remedy all the situations that they were discussing, all the instances they were discussed in the previous meeting. And we met with them, one of them by phone and one in person, and everything seemed to go well. And we let them know that the fence would be completed. And what else? That's all I have. I just want to add that Mr. Tidmore, it does want to be a good neighbor and provide, be a good resident of the county and just provide all the benefit to the county that he can, and as running his business and providing the jobs for the community. Thank you.
Thank you again, Mr. Garcia. So now on to staff closure. So back to you, I think, Mino, 2 minutes.
Chair Piscotti, commissioners, I don't have any further comments. I'm happy to answer any questions that commissioners may have about process, about county standards, zoning ordinance, that sort of thing. But I have no additional comments to make. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from the commissioners? Commissioner Benson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One of the questions I have is regarding the parking spots on the south end of the property. Looking at the plans, it looks like they're angled, and so I just wanted to hear Mino or somebody that's making this request, your response to Mr. Garcia's statement about the access. If the 6-foot easement is adhered to on the south side of the property.
Chair Piscotti, Commissioner Benson, I'd be happy to answer that. If any of the applicants would like to clarify if I make any omissions or errors. So originally, under the previous special use permit, CSU 2018-0013, the access easement ran straight across the southern boundary of the site to the cell tower on the parcel to the east. The applicants are currently engaged in a subdivision action to split off a portion of the property up against 2nd Street as a separate parcel, remove that from the special use permit. And in doing so, they are realigning the access easement so that it continues along the southern border of the property for a spell, and then jogs up to the north around that proposed parking. So there was some engineering that needed to be done in order to negotiate that easement around the parking and ensure that there's still appropriate turning radius and turnaround for emergency vehicles. As to whether that angled parking would negate or whether a landscape buffer would encroach upon the easement, I couldn't say without measuring specifically, but I do know that it is pretty tight. They did kind of shoehorn those parking spaces in and get that easement just right around there. So I don't believe that the landscape buffer would allow those parking spaces to continue without some significant modification. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yes, thank you. Mino, do you have any, I'm sorry, Mr. Garcia, do you have any further comments to that, to what Mr. Savoca said?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Benson, I agree with what Mr. Savoca said, and yes, it's a very tight fit, and it's right about to the inch. So any other encroachment would would disallow parking there or either encroach into the 20-foot required access easement. Thank you.
Any other questions? Oh, yes, Mr. Tafoya.
Madam Chair, there are members of the public here. I wasn't sure if they were going to be asked to speak up, or if it was even appropriate for them to speak up. That we had sworn them in.
Okay, would that be Ms. Kim Rodarte? I can't see the last name.
Hold on.
So, yeah, if she'd like to speak up, that's fine. That's, yeah.
Chair
think-
Piscotti, Ms. Rodarte Wolf is one of the agents for the applicant.
I'm sorry, one of the agents for,
For the applicant.
okay, okay. Do you want to go ahead? And Kim, I can't see you and you're muted.
I don't have any further information. I think Carl covered pretty much everything.
Okay, thank you. Mino, I have a question. It seems that one of the conditions is reducing the 15-year special use down to 5, and that seems like a pretty severe cut. Why did you come to that conclusion? Why did the Planning Commission come to that?
Chair Piscotti, there were violations on this property resulting from the original site plan. It did not appropriately illustrate parking or equipment storage. And so there were issues with the site not being used as was depicted on the original site plan. And hence this updated special use permit with an updated site plan shows the parking as it is existing on the site and storage areas as they exist on the site. So the commission felt that a 5-year plan would provide the applicant time to prove that they were a good neighbor to the surrounding community, to resolve the issues that the community and the neighbors had raised, and then come back for a new special use permit in 5 years' time.
Okay. Nick Ham, you have a comment?
Madam Chair, members of the commission, Nicholas Ham, zoning administrator for Bernalillo County. Just to add to what Mino stated previously, from the department perspective, there were some compliance issues sort of out of the gate with this original approval. And then at the planning commission level, there was concerns raised by the neighboring property owners. And I think that between those two factors, that led the commission to believe that a shorter term might be more appropriate so that the county has an opportunity to evaluate this in a shorter period of time to make sure that all is copacetic and that no effects are being felt by the neighboring property owners.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Commissioner O'Malley.
thank you. There was concerns with compliance with the first application. However, the property owners testified that there's some 15-year leases. I don't know if they just started or what. So there's some predictability concerns, I would imagine, in terms of making sure that you have a longer time period, especially if you've got leased properties. So I know it's, so I guess if somebody could answer this, if something is in compliance, is it very difficult to get an extension or basically, is it a new application altogether after 5 years?
Chair Piscotti, go ahead, Nick.
Sorry, Mino. Madam Chair, Commissioner O'Malley, members of the commission, generally with a special use permit that's in compliance and a user that wants to continue to utilize a property in that manner, while it would be considered a new application before the planning commission board, the planning department would generally recommend approval of that request and support the applicant to continue their business or whatever the land use that was approved previously, provided that they're in good standing and that they have demonstrated that they can be a responsible steward of the property.
Is that, so it's still an application process, or is that done administratively?
Madam Chair, members of the commission, it is a new application and it would be heard through the public hearing process.
What are the fees associated with the application process?
Madam Chair, members of the commission, I'm actually going to defer that to Ms. Verek or Mr. Savoca. I'm not, I don't deal with fees for special use permits quite often, so I think there's probably better staff equipped to answer that.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, an application for special use permit would be, for this property, would be about $450. And then the applicant would also incur the cost of preparing the application, including the site plan, and potentially having additional support from agents to take the application through the process.
Oh, I see. That's right, the agents. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Commissioner Benson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Is Mr. Savoca, the 6-foot landscaping perimeter, is that standard for such a property as this?
Chair Piscotti, Commissioner Benson, a 6-foot landscape buffer is required under Section 19 of our zoning code, which deals with landscape buffers in the county. It requires a 6-foot landscaping buffer between commercial, industrial uses and residential uses. Does not require a buffer between commercial and commercial, or commercial, industrial, et cetera. So only where those uses are adjacent to residential communities, as it is present on the north and south borders of the site.
Okay, and then in the original plan, was there I have a hard time reading this. Was there a 6-foot buffer in the original plan on the south wall where there's now a 3-foot?
Chair Piscotti, Commissioner Benson, there was not shown a landscape buffer on the southern portion of the property. It is my understanding, and I would defer to the applicant, that the applicant took it upon himself to build that, which was not identified in the site plan. So that was something that the applicant did on their own. You could say in violation of the site plan.
Okay, so there was a 6-foot buffer that was supposed to be in there?
Chair Piscotti, Commissioner Benson, there was not identified a 6-foot landscape buffer on the southern portion in the original or the updated site plan. The site plan shows a 6-foot landscape buffer on the north and the east sides of the property, and additional landscaping on the western portion.
Okay, and then on the east side, why was there a 6-foot buffer? Because didn't you say that between 2 commercial properties, that's not required?
Chair Piscotti, Commissioner Benson, that is correct. The property to the east has a special use permit for a wireless tower. However, the underlying zoning is A1. So theoretically, hypothetically in the future, if that special use permit were to be removed, that could be developed as a residential property. I can't speak to the applicant's intention in terms of why they put a landscape buffer on the east side, but that was shown on the original site plan and on the updated site
plan. Okay, so all right, so it looks like the 6-foot buffer is there on the north side. The appellant has raised the wall, or is in the process of raising it 8 feet per requested. The southern boundary, the eastern boundary, it's special use with cell towers, so it doesn't seem like that's as big of a concern. The southern boundary, that's a tough one because he's got parking spaces there, but he wasn't required to put one there in the first place, right? That's been added to this new plan. I guess that's the tough one for me, because if he puts that in, then he loses the parking spaces. Right? Am I missing something there?
Chair Piscotti, Commissioner Benson, The three, it's, and I'd have to defer to the applicant. It felt like maybe a 3-foot buffer on the south side. That extends up until that angled parking. So it extends across the majority of the southern portion of the site, even though it is not identified in the site plan. But yes, if it were required to continue that landscape buffer all the way through the entire portion of the southern boundary, I do believe that would negate the, or would make it much more difficult to have the same number of parking spaces. I'm going to defer to our zoning administrator. I see he has his hand up.
Thank you, Mino. Madam Chair, Commissioner Benson, I just wanted to hopefully make clear that the 6-foot landscape buffer for properties of this nature, in particular, contractors' yards against a residential zone or an underlying residential zone, is a standard county requirement. As you can imagine, a contractor's yard can be somewhat of an intense operation between storage of materials and just general activity of the user. So it is generally expected and required in the county that a 6-foot landscaper would be there. To put this another way, if the use was occurring in a zone that was permissive, one of the county's industrial zones or heavy commercial zones, by default, a 6-foot landscape buffer would be required at the interface between that and residential zones.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
So the applicant on this one piece of property that abuts another special use zone, the applicant has said that if it does become a residential zone, that they would comply with the requirement. Is that my understanding? He's nodding, so I guess so. Thank you.
Chair Piscotti and Commissioner O'Malley, I do want to state that the site plan does show a 6-foot buffer on that eastern border. So the applicant should be required to abide by the site plan as approved, regardless of whether it is a commercial or residential use. I'm sorry if I haven't made that clear. The site plan shows a landscape buffer on the north side and the east side of the property. Therefore, they will be required to abide by the site plan that they proposed. And regardless of the use on that eastern boundary, because they have proposed a 6-foot landscape buffer on the east side, the 6-foot landscape buffer should be included in the property.
But they're appealing that, so, correct?
Chair Piscotti, Commissioner O'Malley, they are appealing a condition that requires a landscape buffer. However, they have drawn a landscape buffer as stated, and so they will be required to abide by the site plan as it is shown.
Okay. So they drew the 6-foot buffer, but then didn't install the 6-foot buffer. But it's a requirement to have the 6-foot buffer. Is that accurate?
Chair Piscotti, I see my supervisor, Catherine, shaking her head, so I'm going to let her weigh in and perhaps correct me if I'm mistaken.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, I am looking at the approved site plan, and maybe Mr. Garcia can also confirm this, or Mr. Tidmore, but the landscape plan does not show landscaping along the east property line. Mino, maybe you can check on that. I do see landscaping along the north and a portion of the south property line. Is that correct, Mr. Garcia?
Madam Chair, Commissioners, that's correct. And am I able to address any other points, or is that not appropriate?
No, go ahead.
Okay. I'd like to add, on the south side where the property abuts residential, the majority of the activity is conducted on the north side of the property. That's where the storage is and the rear of the property. Where abutting the residential on the south side, where the 3-foot buffer is currently located, there's a 6-foot block wall there, and there is a landscape buffer of 3 feet, and that's for about 3/4 of the property. There's about, I believe, 120 feet that incorporates the parking at the southeast corner. And we have not had any complaints or concerns from the resident from the mobile home park to the south. So, Mr. Tidmore did just add that in there to be a good neighbor and to add to the buffering of the wall, to add some greenery that's going to grow above the wall and to be more aesthetically pleasing as well. And so, yeah, and the reason we're asking because there is a commercial use approved, special use for commercial use of the antenna approved at the east side. That's where we are asking to not comply with, not have the 6-foot buffer unless there would be a residential use. We would add that, we would request that condition be added. And then if I may, to the west, there is also a special use for commercial use for a sheet metal business. So there's a portion that does not contain a 6-foot buffer right now. And that's the portion that if we're required to add a 6-foot buffer, that's going to encroach into the 20-foot access easement that's surrounding the entire property. And that's the corner where there is a fire hydrant at that southwest corner as well. So we have special uses surrounding us as well. And 2 of them are commercial to the east and to the west. Thank you.
Mino, has that actually been looked at, the fire hydrant, and if that would be encroached upon, or if there would be any negative effects of that?
Chair Piscotti, I couldn't speak to that. We did not receive any comments from the fire marshal regarding the application or the appeal, so I couldn't speak to the fire hydrant. And I do want to apologize. Ms. Varek is correct. There does show in the landscaping plan, landscaping along the north side. The site plan is a little bit ambiguous. It shows a 6-foot landscaping buffer on the north side that appears to curve down to the east side, but that just could be an error in how it's drawn, or how I'm interpreting it rather. So I apologize. There's not a landscape buffer shown on the eastern boundary of the property.
And the east side, is that where the cell tower is?
Chair Piscotti, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. Well, I see we're all trying to think this one through. Yes, Nick Ham.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, if I might offer a solution, perhaps, it's not without precedent that a landscape buffer would be required at time of residential development. But what I think is important to convey and for the applicant to understand is that in doing so and agreeing to that the area of the site plan and the physical built environment would have to allow for that flexibility in the future moving forward. So said another way, what the county would expect is that there would be no permanent physical improvements that would encumber or otherwise prevent a landscape buffer from being installed there. So it seems to me that the commission is trying to strike a balance between protecting future residential development and allowing Mr. Tidmore the benefit of the site while that is approved for something that is non-residential. And I can say that there is some history, although I would characterize as a unique solution to have landscaping installed in the future at such time that residential development occurs there. And although while I do have the floor, I will add that the buffering against the residential zones, as the zoning administrator, I cannot emphasize enough how important those are to protect those residents. Even 6 feet is probably, that's really minimal. So taller fencing, more landscaping, those would be measures that the county would look to implement as far as protecting the peaceful enjoyment of the residences. And just to remind everyone, the residences were here first. The contractor's yard came later. So we're trying to find a situation where we support economic development and businesses, but we also are mindful of the fact that folks live here and they have for some time.
Commissioner Benson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Ham. I appreciate your perspective here and your experience. just from the little information I have, I'm not as worried about the eastern boundary. I like the proposal of nothing permanent there until actually ever, so that just in case that does become residential, we can, that would allow the applicant to landscape. My concern is the southern wall. He's got a 3-foot landscaping barrier there, but he also has parking spots. He's providing jobs. He's providing resource in our community. Parking, everybody in this Zoom call understands how tough parking can get, and what a quandary that can be to try to solve parking. I'd hate to see him lose parking spots, but at the same time, we've got residences on the other side. Would there be any way to keep the 3-foot landscaping that he currently has, and maybe reinforce the wall, like you had said, Mr. Ham? And that being said, also, there hasn't been, from what I've heard, there hasn't been complaints coming from that side, just from the north side. It sounds like that's being addressed, no problem. I'd like to find a way to allow the applicant to be able to keep his parking.
Go ahead, Mr. Garcia.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, I'd like to propose that we'd be allowed to raise that wall to 8 feet, abutting the 7 parking spaces. I find that as a possible alternative.
And I guess maybe Nick, would that be allowed? Because I heard you say that a business has to have a 6-foot landscaping. So would that be okay, or?
Madam Chair, members of the commission, I'll answer that this way. The default requirement for the zoning code at the interface between commercial industrial uses and those of a residential nature would be 6 feet. But I'll also remind the commission that you have broad authority in varying minimum standards as you see to be fit and to be consistent with the intent of the ordinance. So if you were to find that a reduced landscape area and a increased wall height accomplish the goal of buffering that interstitial or that intersection of residential and commercial uses, you would be well within your authority in doing so. I am an advocate for the code, so I would recommend that we go with 6 feet, but I understand that there are competing forces here and that I'm not the end all be all here. So the commission has broad authority, and you could certainly modify it in that manner if you saw it to be appropriate.
Madam Chair, if I have a question for Mr. Ham. So what is the height of the wall now? They're proposing actually 8 feet, which is like almost close to a ceiling height, it seems. What is the height of the wall now?
Madam Chair, Commissioner O'Malley, and I'm going to ask Mino to correct me if I'm wrong, but the wall is 6 feet height, to my knowledge. That is the requirement, the minimum requirement for walls or solid walls or fences between residential and commercial or industrial uses. Just remind the commission that's a minimum requirement. You could impose a stricter wall height, but I think that we also need to be mindful of the fact that there might be limitations with how the wall is constructed to how high they can go. So while we don't have the benefit of reviewing construction documents, I think we also need to just be mindful of the fact that there are physical limitations with regard to how the wall might be constructed, that it could or could not support that. I don't know, maybe an engineer could help me out there.
That's a very tall wall, 8 feet. That's all I was, 7 feet's pretty tall. 6 feet's actually pretty tall, but I was just wondering why we would think that, 8 feet would make a difference versus, I don't know, 6 or 7. But that's just my thinking.
Okay. Commissioner Casada, I see your hand is up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a comment. It's more about each property, and especially when it comes to old historic development and zoning. It seems to me that some of the properties that I've dealt with through my 4 years as a county commissioner, that although I respect our policies and I respect how we put our plans in place, our zoning plans and everything, but it always seems that we always run into properties that just don't quite fit into what our standards are. And that we find ourselves many times having to compromise or adjust what and how we do things depending on the circumstances, the location, and whatnot. So for me, if there's a way to compromise to move this forward, I think that that's something that we should consider. I also don't know what an 8-foot wall looks like either. I don't think I've seen an 8-foot wall except for maybe jail or something like that. And so I don't know. For us, it's like, yeah, that's a great compromise. But what if you live next to the 8-foot wall and you hate it? You know what I mean? And so I don't know what that looks like. So I have to agree that I've never seen an 8-foot wall. I mean, so we have to tread lightly on what our compromises would be. If 6 foot is sufficient, then he's within, doing it right. And I think the buffer is what we have to discuss, whether the compromise is, hey, if this particular special use permit on this particular property in this particular location, we're good with the 3-foot, landscaping buffer in order to not only save the parking, but the 6-foot wall is within the policies. And so it's really not really about the wall to me. It's just about us tweaking this particular area, this particular section in this particular special use permit. I mean, that for me would be the compromise. And sometimes, we have to make these decisions based on the property location and whatnot. So that's just my comment, Madam Chair. And, we'll talk that out. Thanks.
Okay, Nino, it looks like you want to address that. Go ahead.
Yes, I do want to state that there was one additional modified condition of approval that the commission imposed that is not being appealed, and that is for an 8-foot wall all the way around the property. So as a condition of approval, they will be increasing the wall all around to 8 feet. So I don't want us to belabor that point when it's already kind of been decided by the planning commission.
Okay. Commissioner Barboa?
I was just saying, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I also just, that a standard house is 8 feet. Like Florida's ceiling is 8 feet tall, just for y'all's reference. But yes, that I was just saying thanks to Bino for the information.
Okay, thank you. So does anybody have any more questions, comments, or would anybody like to make a motion on this? Nick Ham.
I'm sorry. I wanted to add one more thing, I just want to make sure that the commission has all of the information to make the best decision. The properties to the north of the site, there are some 2-story structures there. So while the first story might be protected from some effects of the contractor's yard, bedrooms and things of that nature that are on the 2nd story, they could benefit from that 8-foot tall wall. The applicant agreed to that at the planning commission level. That was specifically requested by the opponents that we heard from at the planning commission level. So I just wanted to add that as additional context, and of course would defer to the wisdom of the commission there.
Mr. Tidmore.
Madam Chairman and Commissioners, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
So
Go
just to clarify, we are in the process of raising the north wall to 8 foot, as requested by those homeowners that had some concerns. The other walls are currently at 6 foot, and we were planning on leaving them at that height, but the neighbors wanted the north wall raised to 8 foot, which we are currently doing. Just wanted to clarify that.
I thought you agreed to raise all of them to 8 feet. Wasn't that one of the conditions that Nick just talked about?
No, I don't believe so. It was just the
Me
north
neither.
wall.
It was just the north wall?
Yes.
Nick?
Madam Chair, Commissioners, I can say with certainty that it is the north wall. I may have been remiss, and if I did say the whole property, then I may have misspoken. But with clarity, it is the north wall that was a specific point of concern raised by the neighbors, and that was specifically discussed at the Planning Commission. Apologies if I added some confusion to this. I know it's already a little murky, so I apologize if I had a role in that.
Madam Chair and Commissioners, just to say the way that the condition is written, it is vague. It just says an increase of the wall height to 8 feet. So this may be an opportunity to clarify that.
Okay, yeah, I'm looking at that right now, 8A, and I see that it is very vague, so thank you.
Sure.
Oh, Commissioner
Madam-
Casada.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I'm sorry, Commissioner O'Malley. Hey, if the residents want an 8-foot wall, then who am I to get in the way of an 8-foot wall? I'm just going to say that because I didn't know that there was input from those residents. I thought we were making an 8-foot wall decision without input, but since there's input, then if the 8-foot wall on that northern side makes the residents happier, that's I guess that's our job. So I guess I'm okay with that.
Okay, and Mino, do you want to address that?
Not that specifically. I'd like to address the parking on the southern portion, but once we are done with the wall discussion.
Okay, and can we go to Commissioner O'Malley?
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. So is there any requirements in terms of materials of this? Is it just a block wall? Is there requirements in terms of what the materials would be? Or was there anything like that?
Chair Piscotty and Commissioner O'Malley, the conditions of approval do not state the material of the wall, but our zoning code requires an opaque wall.
Requires a what?
I'm sorry, an opaque wall or fence. Nick, you could probably speak to the exact technical nature of the language.
Madam Chair, Commissioner O'Malley, the language in the zoning code is a solid wall or fence, and that's generally interpreted to be something that cannot be seen through. The current wall is indicated as block or CMU, and the site plan indicates the same. So while the condition may benefit from indicating a material, the site plan already, in my opinion, covers the type of construction. And
Okay.
when I sign a final site plan, I'll just make sure that condition is carried through.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Garcia?
Madam Chair, Commissioners, I would like to state that there is 6-foot solid wall surrounding the entire property on the east, west, and southern property boundaries. And on the northern property boundary, it has been raised to 8 feet. It's not completely done, but it's it's almost complete. It should be done soon. So yes, we are definitely complying with that. The only places there is not where solid walls where there's the electronic gates to enter the property. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments from the commissioners? Mino, did you still want to make a comment?
About the parking in the southern portion. I want to say I'm not an engineer. I'm just doing a back of the napkin sketch. But per the site plan, there's about 103 feet of length for the 7 angled parking spaces. If there is concern for putting a landscape buffer along that portion, by my calculation, you can get 5 parallel 20-foot wide parking spaces in that same space, and that would be, as opposed to being like this, it's flat. So that I haven't drawn this, I haven't done this past Public Works, I haven't spoken to the applicant about it, but there may be an opportunity to do parallel parking as opposed to angled parking to achieve the landscape buffer along the south wall. I just wanted to put that forward as an option for everyone to toss up. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so now would anybody like to make a motion? Go ahead, Commissioner Benson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to make a motion to accept the applicant's request. I think 15 years, it was originally 15 years and it's come up for discussion now. I think 15 years is fine. And I'd like to make the adjustment to the 6-foot southern boundary as it stands to what the current situation is.
Commissioner
That's a
O'Malley?
motion. I'll second the motion if that's the motion.
Okay, so I just want to see if I have this right so we all know what we're voting on. To keep the 15 years. And so that would be, wait, accepting the appeal. Is it accepting the appeal on that one? And then for the second one about the boundary, can you state that again, Commissioner Benson?
Actually, just accepting the second appeal as well.
Okay, accepting it all as is.
Yes, Madam Chair.
Okay. And Commissioner O'Malley, is that what you're seconding that?
Right. I think the proposal was 5 years, and I think because of the predictability and the 15-year leases, I think it should be 15 years. And then also the idea of the parking spaces and making sure that they can keep those and just have the 3-foot, just have the 3-foot instead of 6-foot buffer, I believe is basically the appeal.
Okay. And would that be only for that south boundary and implementing the 6-foot landscape buffer around the other part of the perimeter?
I think that was okay by, I guess maybe we should hear I'm sorry, I think that was the issue was, I was just looking at that one area. But also the area that was, and I think, and I don't know if Commissioner Benson's okay with this, but he had, Mr. Ham had suggested that for that one area that is abutting a commercial area, that we look at the commitment that the appellant is saying that should it become a residential use that they're required not to put anything permanent on there, and that would have to abide by the the zoning requirements that there be a buffer should that be a residential area.
Okay.
I think that's what we're talking about.
Okay. And I see Commissioner Benson giving the "you got it" signal. So, Mino, did you get that? Can you read back to us what we're voting on?
Yes, if I could translate that. So you would be voting to accept the appeal, modify condition 6 to read the special use permit shall be issued for a term of 15 years. And then modifying condition 7A to say all landscaping shall be as shown on the site plan. And that should the eastern property be established as a residential use, the owner shall install a 6-foot landscaping buffer on the east side. Does that encapsulate and encompass everything, commissioners?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
I think you got it, Mino. Okay, so there was a motion by Commissioner Benson, a second by Commissioner O'Malley. So all in favor of that, of what Mino just said, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Looks like we got it. Looks like that was unanimous. Madam Clerk, please call that roll.
Commissioner Barboa,
Aye.
Commissioner Benson,
Aye.
Commissioner O'Malley,
Aye.
Vice Chair Casada,
Aye.
Madam Chair Piscotti.
Aye.
Congratulations.
Yes, thank you all so much for hashing this out and coming to a conclusion. So it looks like we are basically done. And so the next zoning meeting will be Tuesday, May 11, 2020. Oh, hold on. Commissioner Benson still has one more thing. Go ahead, Commissioner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also want to thank Mr. Soroka, specifically and Mr. Ham, but everybody who attended and for your just your mastery of the code and zoning code, because we don't want to run roughshod over it. So I appreciate it, and thank you for your thoroughness and professionalism with this.
Mr. Garcia, did you want to say something?
Madam Chair, Commissioners, and staff of the county, I just want to thank you so much for all your assistance and all you've done in this and all you do. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And Mr. Tidmore.
Yeah, Madam Chairman and Commissioners, yeah, same thing. Thank you all for working through this with us and understanding what we're doing and trying to do a good thing in this neighborhood. I appreciate all of you for serving.
Thanks. And I'm sure you'll be getting a nice letter from Mino or somebody else detailing exactly what we all agreed to here. So you'll know exactly what you need to do on your property to be in compliance.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome. So next meeting, Tuesday, May 11th, 2021, zoning meeting at 3 p.m. and that will still be a Zoom meeting. There will be some signing of official documents, and if there's no other business, this meeting is, look at Mr. Commissioner Casada. He's like, this meeting is what? It's adjourned.